NFL Network has just recently released its top 100 players of 2022, and as you all know, that I have had quite a fair share amount to say about this subject matter, especially in the community tab, in which there has been a list of players that have been overrated and underrated, and now I'm about to release you my list of the top 100 players of 2022. This list is not going to be a list of personal bias. This list has been thoroughly went over, researched very thoroughly, and it's going to be based off of 3 criteria. The first of which is going to be on Pro Football Focus grades. The second metric is going to be on consistency, and this kind of ties into Pro Football Focus grades, in which how good the player is on a consistent basis. And then the last criteria is impact or playmaking. Impact and playmaking is kind of mostly based off of how they operate on the stat sheet. And now let's kick this off with players 100 through 81. We're gonna start backwards and then work our way forwards. I have no problems with how some of these players have been rated in the initial top 100. You can go and check out the original order by taking a look at the pictures in the community tab to see where you can compare my list to the NFL's top 100 list. And this might be quite controversial here with the players rated here at 80 through 61. Kirk Cousins I have rated as the 80th best player in the NFL. I know a lot of people like to dog him for the team's inability to win for the Minnesota Vikings, but the Pro Football Focus grades don't lie, and the stats don't lie. Kirk Cousins is without a doubt one of the most consistent quarterbacks in the NFL. The Pro Football Focus grades don't lie. The consistency doesn't lie. The impact on his football team is probably a little bit lesser than some quarterbacks that are going to be named a little bit later. But Kirk Cousins, whenever you take a look at the stats, they jump out to me, and I have to put him in the top 100. Some other players that I believe that should have made it and haven't are Frank Ragnau and Shaq Mason. Frank Ragnau has been one of the more consistent centers in the NFL, plays for the Detroit Lions. Maybe that's all you need to know. And Frank Ragnau has been a good, consistent center, makes a big impact on the Detroit Lions, even though he doesn't pop off your screen. But his presence as a good starting center probably should be getting some more recognition than he does. As well as Shaq Mason. He is a versatile offensive lineman that can play center, he can play guard, and I think he actually played a little bit of time at offensive tackle, I think at the right tackle spot for the New England Patriots, now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has graded out very well. I think it's time that these centers and guards get more recognition for what they do for their team, even though they are not skilled position players, but they do deserve some more respect in that regard. And there's one player here at 64 that you might be scratching your head and saying, why is Micah Parsons this low? Well, here is my reasoning. Micah Parsons, again, he is coming off a great rookie season. The Pro Football Focus grade of 89.7 was just tremendous. But hear me out. And here's why I have Micah Parsons probably a little bit lower than a whole lot of people. It's because I think that it's a little bit too soon to coronate Micah Parsons as one of the best linebackers in the NFL. When I was able to take a look at his Pro Football Focus grades, he graded out insanely well in the pass rush department. He graded up at the top as a pass rusher. Micah, by virtue of that, really shows that he has a whole ton of potential as a pass rushing outside linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys, but he graded pretty poorly in the running game and was pretty decent in coverage. I think he was about average in pass coverage. So I think it's going to take some time for Micah Parsons to become a good complete linebacker, which is why I have him rated this low. But with the potential and with the athletic ability that Micah possesses, he could very well be a top 20 player in the NFL, and I think that potential is going to come sooner than you think. And then I also have the same case for Jamar Chase, who is coming off a tremendous rookie season, and his potential is through the roof. Jamar Chase graded at an 83.1. Very, very good, especially coming from a rookie. But I think it's a little too soon to say that Jamar Chase is a top 5 receiver. I think he's very good. I think I can probably safely place him in the top 10, and I should be able to at least find him a spot in the top 70, and that's where I decided to place him at this juncture, because I think it's a little too soon to coronate him as a top receiver. I just need to see a little bit more from Jamar and see what happens after coming off just one incredibly impressive rookie season. Now getting to 60 through 41, whereas some players I'd like to touch up on are some players that didn't even make the list and deserve a little bit more respect. Starting off with the Vita Vega, who I had graded at ranked 60, where he graded kind of somewhat inconsistently on the Pro Football Focus grades, but his impact on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a run-stuffing nose tackle really speaks some volumes to me. Vita Vega is one of the biggest reasons why you cannot run the football on Tampa Bay's run defense, and that right there alone gives me enough to be able to put him in the top 100, because his presence as a run-stuffing nose tackle just really, really strikes fear into opposing running backs because of his presence. He doesn't offer very much in the pass rush department, but that's okay. Vita Vega is often taking on double teams as a nose tackle, sometimes triple teams. That's probably why we're seeing him more of as just a run-stopping monster, and that's why I'm rated at 60. And then 58, Demarcus Lawrence. He wasn't even put on the top 100 at all, but the Pro Football Focus grades speak for themselves, the consistency and his playmaking ability. Demarcus probably hasn't been great in the sack department from year to year, but I think his playmaking as not just as a pass rusher, but also as a run stopper really should be giving him a little bit more respect than he has gotten, and should probably be rated a little bit higher amongst his peers. Demario Davis, the outside linebacker / middle linebacker for the New Orleans Saints, was completely left off this list. Shame on them, because Demario Davis is truly one of the biggest impact and playmaking linebackers in the NFL. He's very consistent, graded out very well. I don't know what happened here. And lastly, I want to go to J.C. Jackson, who was rated much higher on the original top 100. I think that J.C. Jackson, by his playmaking ability, he's an interception machine. But I think that the fact that his playmaking ability probably has overshadowed his inconsistencies in coverage. He is coming off a tremendous season with the New England Patriots, and now he is going to be taking his talents to Los Angeles and play for the Chargers and make a secondary even better. But I think the fact that he is graded at 69.5 and 67.3 probably shows some inconsistencies in his coverage and in coverage and in his play. I think that he was probably rated just a little bit too high for my liking for him to be rated at about in the top 50. I think is probably pretty appropriate. Maybe I could place him in the top 40 because he is that impactful. But at this point, I think probably 42 is pretty close to where I think he truly rates. Marcus Williams, the safety for the Baltimore Ravens, and then last year he was with the New Orleans Saints. Again, this guy has graded out very well in Pro Football Focus. He is the guy that was known for tackling air and completely whiffing on Stephon Diggs. Minnesota won at the Miracle in Minneapolis. Marcus Williams has been a tremendous safety for the New Orleans Saints for the past several years, and the Pro Football Focus grades speak for themselves. He is not a really great playmaker, but the impact is felt, and Marcus Williams is really truly an underrated player and deserves a lot of respect for what he does at his position. Jair Alexander. Jair Alexander was not even placed in the top 100, and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Jair Alexander has been one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL, and safe to say that I think he probably might very well be the second or the third best cornerback. I know that a lot of people would say that he's probably the best cornerback in the NFL, coming from Green Bay Packers fans, and I have went on that I might even have said that he's the best cornerback in the NFL. But I went back and I looked at the Pro Football Focus grades. I went back and looked at the stats. I think that he is probably, due to the injuries that he's sustained, it probably impacted his play a little bit to where he looks like that he's inconsistent. But when Jair was healthy, he was one of the more consistent corners in the NFL. So I think Jair Alexander does deserve does deserve a spot, at least in the top 30, because it's not his fault that he was injured, and it's not his fault that maybe his injury impacted his play. And then again, to another Packer player, David Bakhtiari, who was left completely off this list. I understand because of the injury, and he didn't really grade very well at 75.2. In which the only game that he did play in which his knee was impacting his play. So that's why David didn't grade out very well in the one game that he did play last season. But before then, David Bakhtiari was widely considered one of the best offensive tackles in the NFL. He was probably arguably the best pass blocking left tackle in the NFL. He could stand to be more consistent in the ground game. So I understand that's where some people would be coming from, and then that's why I gave David probably a spot at 23, probably because he could stand to do a little bit of a better job with consistency as a run blocker. Otherwise, he's a tremendous pass blocker, and he deserves a spot in the top 100. Now here we go to the top 20 players of the top 100 players of 2022. I'd like to start with number 19, most notably Ryan Ramcheck. He didn't even make the top 100 list, and for whatever reason, I have absolutely no idea. He graded very well, and he's a very good, consistent offensive tackle, and I think, in my opinion, the best right tackle in the NFL. He has been very highly overlooked, and I don't think he's even made a Pro Bowl. It's mind-boggling to me. Ever since Ryan came into the league, he's been one of the better offensive tackles in the league, and I think that he has gotten no respect as in the mainstream media especially. He's gotten some buzz. A lot of people have talked about him, but he doesn't get enough credit that is due to his play, what he's been able to do at right tackle for the New Orleans Saints, and I think it's time that that somebody gives him something this season, as nobody has. And now, as long as we're on the topic of offensive linemen, Zach Martin, you probably might think that I'm crazy for placing him in the top 10. Zach Martin, when you look at the Pro Football Focus grades and the impact that he makes for the Dallas Cowboys on the offensive line, whether if he's playing at guard or if he's playing at offensive tackle, his grades in the 90s and the high 80s for the past 3 seasons is just pretty remarkable to me, and his consistency is just outright amazing. He's more consistent than Quentin Nelson, and I just think that his dominance as a right guard or a right tackle, wherever he's playing on the offensive line, speaks volumes to me. And now I'd like to be able to go back to Trent Williams. I'd like to be able to go to Trent Williams, where you might be thinking, you are crazy putting Trent Williams in the top 3 ahead of Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes, Devontae Adams, TJ Watt, Tom Brady. Trent Williams, to me, when I take a look at that 96.6 Pro Football Focus grade, you got to realize this, where Pro Football Focus put this into perspective, is that Trent Williams had an insanely dominant year as a run blocker. He probably has graded the highest from a run blocking grade probably ever since Pro Football Focus ratings became a metric. So I think that really he hasn't. I think that fact that there's just that Trent is just this dominant force on the 49ers offensive line. He is a good impact off pass blocking offensive tackle too, even though he's graded about 10th. But Trent really makes his presence felt on that 49er offensive line. In fact, he is one of the reasons, and probably the key reason, as to why the 49ers offensive line is so good. And finally, to finish off, why I have Aaron Donald as the best player of 2022 in the NFL is simply just because when you look at the Pro Football Focus ratings, he is graded in the 90s consistently. His impact, his presence has most definitely been felt. I know a lot of people are probably saying, especially Packer fans are saying, that it should be Aaron Rodgers, that should be number one, that because he won MVP. Well, let me tell you something, is that MVP doesn't necessarily mean that he's the most valuable player, not necessarily the best player. We know that Aaron Rodgers has been the most valuable player to the Packers, hands down, and he truly does provide probably the most value because he is a quarterback, and obviously a quarterback arguably has the most value to a team, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's the best player. And I think that Aaron Donald, of course, is a very valuable player to the Los Angeles Rams, but I don't know if he's the most valuable player. But I think it's very, very close between him and Matt Stafford. But I truly think that Aaron Donald is the best player in the NFL, and I just can't really argue with the Pro Football Focus grades, the numbers, and the impact that Aaron has on the NFL, not just his football team. And to finally end this video off, is that it's okay for anyone to disagree with me. It's just that I kind of have been able to base my list based off of the metrics of Pro Football Focus, consistency, impact, and playmaking ability, as I have explained earlier. And perhaps maybe I might be missing something. Maybe I might be missing some other elements in which maybe somebody could actually give their opinion and see what they think about maybe what I'm missing. Maybe some players I might have overrated or underrated. It's always... And that is my list of the NFL's top 100 players of 2022. And on to the NFL's 2022 season. And hopefully it will be a good one.